Welcome to the Head Shepherd Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO at Next Gen Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, a big thanks to our three fantastic sponsors. Allflex, part of MSD, perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia, offers one of New Zealand and Australia's largest livestock product portfolios with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Heininger is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Heininger team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. ProA Livestock Equipment have been delivering industry-leading livestock handling systems to producers across Australia, New Zealand and beyond for the last 25 years to improve on-farm safety, efficiency and profitability. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. You're with Ferg. Great to have you listening along. This week on the show, we feature Joe Kerin of Kerin Agriculture. Those who've listened along for a while will know that we've had Nigel on a few times, but we thought it'd be a great opportunity to get Joe on to talk through their Wagyu operation and the approach to that. Joe recently spoke at the Wagyu conference and I heard that talk and thought, let's get him on here and have a yarn as well. So yeah, a really interesting chat through their approach to Wagyu. Only been doing it a few years, but absolutely leaning into it as I do with everything at Kerin Ag. Before we get into that, a quick mention that we're only a few weeks away from LambX now. And as I mentioned last week, we've teamed up with Tim Goal and Flocksake to run a bit of a look around Adelaide after festivities finish on the Wednesday night. I think the trade hall closes around 7:30 on Wednesday, so we will take the charge to lead a few people around Adelaide. There's only one stipulation, that is that you're wearing tweed. And that was Golly's idea, and we're running with it. It turns out it's harder than you think to buy tweed in op shops these days. We're all struggling on that front, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, if you are getting along to LambX, that's a great opportunity to catch up with us that evening. But we'll be there in the trade hall there with SwabTech and with Weatherby Scientific, a couple of our collaborating partners. So it'd be great to catch up with lots of people at LambX at 26. Righto, we'll get underway with this week's show with Joe Kerin of Kerin Agriculture. Welcome, Joe Kerin, to Head Shepherd.
Morning, Mark. How you going?
Good, mate. Great to have you on. We've heard from Nigel a few times on the show, but I thought it would be great to get the next generation on as well. But I guess, swing the focus more towards the other part of your business, which you're in charge of, which is the Wagyu job. But we'll, so we're looking forward to a bit of a chat about all that front.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Yeah, I guess we kind of know the background of the business, so we don't need to go into that detail. But I guess Kerin Ag's always had a reputation for being data-driven and unemotional about livestock decisions. As you've sort of grown up inside that culture, I guess how do you now think about data and decision-making, and how's that evolved over your time at the business and away at Marcus and all the things that go with that?
Yeah, so I guess growing up in that culture, I realistically don't really know any other way of doing it. But what I'm finding over time is the more we use data, the better results we get. And the only times that I've ever really been burnt in decision-making is when I've let emotions override what the numbers are telling us. The numbers, they don't lie, providing that you've got the right numbers in there. So I guess over time, my use of data and the numbers has actually gotten more prominent in the decision-making, if anything. Yeah, like I said, there's no reason really not to use the numbers, providing the numbers are, it's providing it's good data being converted into useful information.
Yeah, no, awesome. And I think, like all of us, once we start seeing the power of data, you kind of gets a bit addictive because it's hard to do anything without it when you know how good it can be.
Yeah, it does. You find yourself spending a lot of nights in front of a laptop just looking at numbers because you can.
Yeah. Interesting to pivot into the Wagyus. Obviously, Kerin Ag was already highly successful as a merino ram breeding business as well as a cattle trading business, and then Wagyu seed stock, I guess, seems like a bit of a pivot. What was behind that business decision?
So we've always made our business decisions and our enterprise choices off selling grass to the highest bidder. And the highest bidder is the class of animal, the trade, or the enterprise that's going to best convert grass into dollars and cents at the other end. So with that in mind, we had a look at the business. We ran a SWOT analysis and found that a couple of our strengths were client relations from Kerin Pole, seed stock production, and converting grass into saleable product. We didn't want to start another sheep enterprise. We wanted to just keep it one breed of sheep, that all our sheep focus goes on it, and that's what we nail and that's what we do in the sheep game. So we didn't want to put another sheep breed on, which realistically left us with cattle. We were never going to go into goats or anything like that. And the industry outlook for the beef industry is incredibly positive. Typically, I find that I've been told by mentors that I've got that the Australian beef market follows about 3 to 4 years behind what the American beef market does. And America's had massive historical record-breaking prices now for a fair while that don't look to be going anywhere because the supply and demand for beef is just, it's out of whack. There's not enough demand. There's not enough supply to meet the demand. So I actually think we're going to see a fairly strong beef industry price-wise come into Australia here very shortly. And we're maybe just starting to see the start of that now. And then we had to look at what added value to our business. Seed stock has the higher return per DSE and it therefore makes it the best use of our grass. But cows have the ability to turn otherwise incredibly undigestible grass that's left behind by trade animals and sheep into cash via calves. They're a great way of removing that hard to digest feed out of the system that if we tried to do it with trade animals, we'd either be lowering weight gains or losing weight. So the cows can come in, remove that out of the system and have high production feed growing behind where that low digestibility feed was.
Yeah, which makes a good business option.
Yeah, so when we decided that we were going to bring a beef breeding enterprise into the business, we narrowed it down to 2 breeds, and that was between full-blood Wagyu and Angus. And both breeds have got their positives and both breeds have got their drawback. Angus is by far the more liquid breed. Look, it doesn't matter what class of animal it is. If it's Angus and it goes to the sale yards, it's going to sell, and it's going to normally sell at a premium to other breeds. Where Wagyu is a little bit, they're not as easy to shift, which is where supply chain relationships become incredibly important. But the seed stock has value, but so do the feeder animals and cull animals. Like in 2022, Wagyu prices were sitting up around $10, $11 a kilo, and still realistically, they come back down and they use that Angus feeder steer price almost as a floor for the feeder animals. And we're at a point now where it is actually just starting to get that premium over the Angus animals again. So when we looked at the 2 breeds and we weighed up our options, the Angus stud market was an incredibly saturated market. There's a lot of Angus breeders out there doing a very, very good job. It would have been difficult for us to differentiate ourselves and I guess deliver something that someone else wasn't already able to deliver. So we ended up going with full-blood Wagyu, and one of the big reasons for that was I had some concerns about the mature cow weight starting to sneak into the Angus breed. And I ran some numbers after weaning this year in January and just compared the pair between our full-blood cows and our recip cows, which are predominantly Angus or Angus Frisian cross. And what we found was, well, just to take a step back, we actually put a dollar value on our grass. So like a feedlot knows exactly what their ration is going to cost, we've got a broad idea of what every kilo of utilisable feed costs within the business. And when you take the daily consumption of a class of animals, we'll use cows for an example, and add it up over a year, you're actually able to get a yearly adjustment rate that every animal has to meet in order to pay their way and stay in the business. And cows aren't like sheep. You can't cover any of those costs with a fleece. So realistically, a cow's only got 2 ways of paying their way in the business, and that's either with a calf or as a cull animal, which is not the ideal route. But when you start putting a dollar value on the grass and you look at the consumption rates, the adjustment rates on for reference, our full blood cows average 525 kilos at weaning compared to our recip cows, which was 615 kilos. And that added up to a yearly consumption difference of almost a ton of dry matter per year. So when you put a dollar value on that, that yearly adjustment rate starts to really blow out and matter. So because the cows have only got one way really of paying their way and staying in the business, and that's through the calves, we ran the numbers on the calves. So we weaned everything at an average of 147 days, and the calves off the full blood cows were 165 kilos compared to 181 off the recip cows, which is a big difference. And what that does tell us is we still need to push the maternal ability of our full blood cows to bring them up to speed. But as a percentage of their mother's body weight, the full blood cows weighed 31% of their weight compared to 29% in the recip cows, which isn't a huge difference. But when you put a value on the calf and compare the two, the full blood calves covered their mother's adjustment bill by 229%, where the calves off the recip cows only covered it by 197% because their mothers are eating so much more to produce that calf throughout the year. So what that showed us is, one, we need to keep bringing up the maternal ability in the full blood cows, but we need to keep that mature cow rate moderate. We see it every day in the paddock when we run the full blood cows and the recip cows separate on similar feed, similar paddocks with kilos per hectare. Feed just disappears in front of the bigger cows, where it doesn't seem to in front of the moderate full blood cows. So that was one of the major driving decisions why we decided to go into Wagyu. It was highest return per kilo of utilisable feed, highest commodity price, they've got insane fertility, and it wasn't as saturated a market to try and get into and actually provide something that was different.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And I've certainly been there when you've been looking out across your recip cows going shaking about how much they can smash out of a paddock in no time.
There's some big girls there. Like, there's an Angus Frisian cow in there that was 908 kilos when she come across the scales last, and she's been in there for 3 years now, and every year she's the one cow that I hope just didn't hold the embryo so I could shift her out, and every year she's in calf.
She just does it for you.
She's determined not to end up a pack of mints.
I guess, heading into Wagyu sort of drives you down a data direction, and cattle generally, everyone loves a good-looking bull, but Wagyu are much more driven by what's under the hide, being mainly that marbling that we all chase. I guess, what have you learnt in your years of breeding Wagyu about combining phenotype and genotype in the Wagyu?
Well, everyone loves a good-looking bull, and Wagyus, in a lot of cases, certainly don't tick that box. But personally, I think it's the best thing that happened to the breed that they are ugly, because no one's game enough to put them in a show ring.
Yeah.
The value and the use of Wagyu is 100% driven by results, production, and data. There is no show ring dragging the focus off in another direction for the sake of getting a ribbon put over their back. So when we first started getting into Wagyu, I was talking to a bloke by the name of Paul Harris, who's Sunland Wagyu up in Queensland. And he's an accountant by trade, very, very smart man, runs a big Wagyu operation up there. And he said to me early on, don't worry about how they look, because I'd rather look out the window at ugly cattle and then look at the computer and see a healthy bank account than look out the window and see good-looking cattle and the computer has an ugly look on the bank account. So, I personally think that them being, I guess, it's not even so much ugly, just a different-looking breed to look at is probably really working in their favour, because everything is based off numbers and actual results. So, but what we are finding is the harder we push growth rates on our bulls, or on our Wagyus in general, the better the phenotype is getting. The higher we get those 200, 400 and 600 day weights, the deeper they're getting, the longer they're getting, and they're not getting that cutaway look in the back end. They're starting to get some real muscle definition and depth through that hind quarter. And what was really interesting was last week we bought all the bulls that we bred last year through the crush. And we were everything has to pass the phenotype test. Nothing gets to stay a bull unless it passes our phenotype test. But what we were finding was as they were walking into the crush, if you had a small, ugly, more traditional-looking Wagyu line up behind the crush and then walk in and his data had come up on the TV screen, every one of them that had that bad, ugly phenotype had a really, really low 200, 400 and 600 day WBV. And every beast that came in that you looked at in the pen before they went up the race that you went, geez, that's a good-looking animal, all had big growth rates. So it's been a big learning this year that historically growth rates haven't been pushed in the Wagyu breed. And after this year, watching those animals coming into the crush, I'm starting to think that's how the breed ended up with the phenotype that it has and I guess the reputation it has for not being the prettiest breed of cattle. But as we bring those growth rates up, that is certainly changing very quickly.
Yeah, I guess that therein lies the challenge, I guess. You've got to bring those growth rates up without increasing mature cow weight, which is the holy
challenge.
Which is the kind of holy grail in the cattle world, obviously, but not undoable. It just takes a lot of focus.
It's not undoable, but I think we can actually breed a more productive and profitable Wagyu by bringing that mature cow weight up slightly. 525 kilos is a pretty small cow.
Yeah.
I actually think we can breed a more fertile, faster growing, heavier carcass weight animal by bringing that mature cow weight up slightly, probably to around that 550 kilo mark, I think would be where you'd want to cap it out. But overall, it's going to be a far more profitable animal.
Yeah, and you talk about, I guess, that phenotype changing, and we've seen Angus start to embrace the mature cow condition score and hip height, which I think give us a lot of potential to kind of build towards a phenotype that is more efficient use of that grass, the mature cow weight, without getting mature cow weight capped without necessarily making them poor or doers. It's about sort of changing that frame score, which is obviously something could easily be applied to Wagyu as well. Is there any of that happening in the game in terms of sort of looking at that condition score of the cow as well?
Yeah, we condition score everything coming into joining, weaning, all those sorts of things. So for a bit of reference, those weaning weights obviously at weaning were both condition score 3. I think the recips would have been a 3.2 and the full bloods would have been bang on a 3. So there was realistically no difference between them.
She's all frame. The obviously genomics is a big part of your business in the merino game, and you've seen the real value of getting accurate data across that side of the business. Wagyu are no different. Obviously, the big thing you're trying to produce in a Wagyu is something you have to get the animal's head off to really value. So that's not much use in a seed stock producer. So genomics becomes really critical there. I guess, where do you see genomics going in your decision making, or where do you use it now? I suppose it's pretty integral.
Well, the best thing I think that the association did was made it mandatory to genomic test animals in order to register them. So every animal realistically is put on a level playing field as far as their genomic testing until that phenotypic data starts coming in. And because the Wagyu industry is so data-driven, carcass data is a huge, huge thing. Like there's bulls in the Wagyu industry that have more carcass data on them than the entire Angus breed combined. So that just puts in perspective how important that data is in the Wagyu breed. So genomics it's mandatory, but even if it wasn't, we would be doing it because it is, I guess it's the window into what that animal is capable of doing before you actually have to find out the hard way. But genomics and the WBVs that come from it, they're just a tool. Realistically, they're just the start, particularly the genomics, until we start to get some performance data and phenotype data to actually back what is being said. So the actual performance data is something that we really enjoy collecting and that we submit to the association so that all our WBVs are enhanced by that data and the accuracy is coming up. I don't necessarily agree with the idea of just doing a genomic snip and that's all the data collection that you've got to do. It's just the start of what needs to be done in order to prove and put reliability into what you're breeding.
Yeah, it's a great point. If you don't keep building your own reference set and keep putting in that phenotype data, then obviously genomics becomes less and less powerful in your herd, and well, it's a disservice to the whole setup because you're only taking in, not putting back in, but also it's obviously the accuracy of your individual decision making is the critical thing that really matters.
Yeah, and it's about providing a product to your client that's reliable, because it's a long game in cattle. Realistically, they're 9 months in mum. They're maybe 12 to call it 18 months before they go to the feedlot. Then in a lot of Wagyu programs, they're in there for 320 to 400 days at times. It's a very, very slow process, and it's a long time before you actually find out whether what you're breeding is right and whether it's delivering those results. So everything that you can do to back your product and provide a reliable outcome for your clients, it needs to be done, because it's just too slow to find out otherwise. And to be honest, it'd hurt to find out the hard way.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's not working. So every bit of data you can put in to add reliability to what you're selling, it does yourself a service, but more importantly, it does your clients a service as well.
Yeah, and I guess the way those clients see that data is once it's turned into, well, in your case, WBVs, so breeding Vs or EBVs is often referred to, but obviously the Wagyu analysis is standalone. I guess if you're a commercial producer out there, maybe with Angus cattle, you're going to put a Wagyu over and you're sort of looking at a wall of breed plan data. I guess for those folks out there who are looking at that data, if there was sort of 3 or 4 EBVs in your sale catalogue or in your sale bulls that you reckon people should focus on, what would they be for you?
Yeah, so that's going to depend what production system you're in Wagyu. If you're in the F1 game, they're terminal. So you're not going to focus on your maternal traits or anything like that. Where if you're in the full bloods or purebreds, you've absolutely got to focus on maternal trait, growth rates. You've got to focus on even the diversity. Like, we're dealing with a fairly shallow gene pool in the Wagyu game. I'm pretty sure it was only 220 animals that left the country. So it's a shallow gene pool that we're dealing with, but the association's done a lot of work by releasing genomic inbreeding scores and diversity scores to manage that. So if I was going to look at 3 WBVs in a F1 production system, the first one is marble score. That is the WBV that's going to deliver the highest levels of profit. And it's the WBV that separates Wagyu from every other breed. So marble score comes first, followed by your carcass weight WBV, and then people have different opinions, but I think growth rates is something that can't be ignored. I think for too long there's been a paradigm that you get a high marble score bull and put it over a high growth Angus cow, and that's all you need. I don't like it works, but I think there's far more benefit to the people producing the calves and then on feeding them if you're putting a high marble score, high growth bull with a high growth female. She'll bring the maternal side. That's easy enough. They're only terminal calves. But we're finding that when we do that combination of a high growth bull with the high marble score, with heterosis from crossbreeding with the Angus's, you're actually getting growth rates that keep up with and compete with a lot of your Euro breeds and British breeds. So they're the ones I'd focus on in an F1 production system. And in the full bloods, still, marble score's the first one you look at, because again, it is the profit deliverer. Second would be the maternal ability. I think that's their traits that they've gone by the wayside in the Wagyu breed for a while in that effort to get the marble scores up. So as I talked about earlier, we still need to lift the maternal ability in our calves, in our full-blood cows, because we want them weaning calves the same weight as any other breed. And then I think growth rates. There's a real paradigm out there that full-blood and purebred Wagyus just don't grow. And that's not necessarily true. What you breed for is what you get. If you're not going to focus on growth, you're not going to get growth. So, yeah, in the purebred, full blood game, marble score, maternal ability, growth rates.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, like it's well put that it depends on, and always it depends is the answer to what traits you should focus on depending on what you're trying to do. But yeah, good to bring that nuance to what people should be doing, because often I think people are buying a terminal and looking at maternal traits, whatever, which makes no sense. I guess marble score is obviously, number one on all objectives, as you pointed out. I guess it does have some trade-offs associated with marble score, and I guess that's the balance with, or trying to get growth and marble score, as far as I know, a little bit antagonistic, but obviously with breeding values you can get around that and achieve both. Is that the main balance that you need to work on in Kerin Wagyu?
Yeah, definitely. To go back a step, and it's something I've been thinking about, is the original breeders of Wagyu in Australia had to focus on marble score. They had to get that bit right, because if Wagyu didn't have that, then they don't deliver anything that any other breed couldn't do. So they had to focus on that marble score, and they had to get it right. Otherwise, the breed could have very easily just gone by the wayside. So they've done a brilliant job of getting animals that marble and developing the brand that is Wagyu. When people hear the word Wagyu, they think high marbling and brilliant eating experience. And in a lot of ways, because of what the early breeders have done with getting that marble score into them, around the world when the word Wagyu is heard, a lot of the time it's actually associated with Australia. The first place that comes to mind is Australia, because we export so much, but so much of the world's Wagyu comes from the Australian production system. 90% of the Wagyu we produce in Australia gets on a boat and goes to another country. So in their efforts to get those marble score, unfortunately, there were a few things go by the wayside. And our job now is to develop a balanced animal that hangs on to those carcass traits that was developed, but also brings in moderate birth weight, so they're vigorous calves, not super light calves like Wagyus can produce from time to time. They don't do, and the survival's not great in them. So moderate birth weight, fast-growing, highly maternal Wagyus that still have all the carcass traits needed to deliver that high marbled beef product.
I guess you've kind of answered it then, but we've seen the evolution of the merino and probably a similar story, really, as in the early merino breeders just had one trait to focus on, and that was all they got paid for. So we produced great wool, and if we look at some banknotes or coins, we see what they used to look like. And yet, if you look at a merino today, certainly a Kerin pole merino, it would be unrecognisable compared to those old animals. And I guess that's kind of the evolution or the path that you're on now with the Wagyu. What do you reckon, if we could fast forward 10, 20 years, or you sort of just explained the traits that you think you'll have in them, but is there anything else you think that future Kerin Wagyu will sort of differentiate itself on?
Yeah, so our breeding objectives are to develop fast-growing, easy-doing, highly maternal and fertile Wagyus that still deliver on all the carcass traits needed to hit the specs within the market. And that's not always hitting 8s, 9s, 9+s on the Osmeat marble score. A lot of the time, the actual more profitable animals are sitting around that 6-7 mark. So what we're aiming to develop is what I'm referring to as the resilient Wagyu. And when I talk about resilience, I'm not talking about environmental resilience, disease resilience, anything like that. We know that we can put Wagyus into just about any climate in Australia and they're going to perform, because they are in just about every climate in Australia now. The resilience I'm talking about is actually financial resilience. One of our goals when we started Kerin Wagyu was to develop an animal that creates additional profit and value for everyone that handles those genetics within the supply chain, because we've noticed in our business, particularly since the end of COVID, that our input costs and our overheads are just on one trajectory, and that's up, and substantially each year. So the question I had when we decided to go for another seed stock business was, what animal can we produce that doesn't just keep up with these rises in input cost, but actually exceeds it and becomes the more profitable choice, not only for us, but for the people that use our genetics. So one of our goals is to find the lines of animals that marble at a younger age, because a big part of marbling is based around maturity of an animal. It's generally the last thing to get laid down when that animal reaches a level of maturity. So we want to find the animals that mature earlier, start to marble earlier, grow like hell, and still deliver a large carcass weight on less days of feed. I think we're heading to a point where the input costs are that high now that we need to get away from these long-fed programs, or at least have the option to deliver a mid-range marbled product with a high carcass weight on less days of feed. So I think that's going to be the evolution of Wagyu now, is less days on feed, faster growing, fix those maternal abilities. There's not much there that needs to be done on fertility. They are insanely fertile.
Right.
It's awesome in your cow herd. There's very little wastage because they're not getting in calf. But on the other coin, you've got some serious problems if you leave them on mum with their brothers until they're 6 months old. You will have pregnant heifers in there.
Yeah.
They're a great way of telling if you've got a recipient cow that slipped the embryo. When she starts to cycle again, she'll have 40 bull calves chasing her around the paddock.
Yeah. No, fertility is not their issue, which has been, like you say, they've gone kind of everywhere across Australia. And I guess you look at them and you think that animal ain't going to survive outside of its feedlot or whatever, but they obviously do and do it well and are very fertile doing it. I guess you've sort of covered it there, as in we're seeing an F1 market really start to mature, with Wagyu going over Angus, and it's moving out from being just a really luxury, really high-end marbling product to something that's just a really good eating quality and marbled, but not to the extreme markets. And there's lots of benefits. Like you've all covered the business benefits, and there's also, we don't really want to get too far down that line, but every day they're not eating grass or not in a feedlot, there's no methane being produced, so there's lots of benefits to that system. And then we'll see a consumer kind of, I guess, slowly weighing up what's the methane or what's the CO2 equivalent of this product versus how good it eats. So at the moment, we'll probably eat it anyway, but eventually we'll change over to sort of having that combined. All the high end consumer that you're focused on will have those dual things they're kind of trying to satisfy in their buying. And so there's lots of benefits of that early growth and not going to such extreme marbling maybe, or doing it on grass or doing it on shorter feeds. That's not a question, that's a big statement. But I guess in seed stock, do you see, or Wagyu seed stock, do you see, they're becoming kind of a group of breeders that really embrace that concept and others that stick to where they're at, or do you think the industry will sort of move together?
Yeah, I think you'll always have breeders in Wagyu that stick to the traditional way of doing it, which is based mostly around pedigree. I think you'll always have them in the industry, but I think we will start to see a shift towards a more balanced animal within the industry. I'm already seeing it in our client base. They're no longer, particularly the F1 blokes, they're no longer happy with just a high marble score animal. They want those growth rates in because they want them on the deck and they want them on a truck as quick as they can to keep grass up their sleeve as climate becomes more variable for their cows, or a lot of them are mixed livestock enterprises, so for other classes of animal. That is already starting to change. And the single trait selection thing in the full bloods and purebreds is starting to change too. People are starting to really see a need to bring some maternal ability back into them and growth rates as well.
Interesting. I want to get off track a little bit, just as a warning, but head down that genomics and inbreeding story. What is, just out of my interest, what levels are we up to in terms of inbreeding for like your average genomic inbreeding? Do they come out as a percentage, or what does that look like? Yeah,
I'm pretty sure the average is sitting at around 12%.
Oh, so it's up there.
It's up there, but it's not, it's not brother to sister at this point.
No. And I guess, so your aim is kind of just maintain that. Obviously, it's going to be pretty hard with your gene pool to reduce that, but you can sort of keep it.
It is
slowly increase it.
It is, but it's been made easier by the association bringing out this genomic diversity score. So it's a measure of the relatedness of that animal to the entire population.
Yeah.
So each year we try and bring in one or two outcross bulls that are just very different to the rest of our herd. Unfortunately, if they haven't followed the main lines of Wagyu, your Shigenamis and Michifukas, the EBVs aren't going to be as good, but we're in a position now where we've got some really impressive WBVs in our female side of things that can balance that out and bring the genomic diversity and to a degree a level of heterosis as well. And what's been really, really good is last year's outcross bull has thrown some absolutely magnificent bull calves this year that are nearly completely unrelated to everything in our herd except for their sisters. So we're able to then use those bulls that are the balance of really good WBVs and diversity to make sure that we aren't breeding ourselves into a corner. So it is manageable, and particularly using mate cell, we're able to manage it really, really easily. We can, put up or down the level of inbreeding that we're happy with, and mate cell will sort it out.
Excellent. I just want to drill in on your learning curve, and we'll sort of talk about, you went to Marcus Oldham, and obviously associated with that you get around other businesses. But I guess the learning curve that you've been on, like I'm assuming, 5 years ago, you knew as much about Wagyu as I do, or something. Some time ago, Wagyu went on your radar, and now you've kind of talked the language and understand everything about it. What's that journey look like? And is that, you've mentioned mentors, obviously reading, listening, whatever. I guess for people out there who are going to approach something different in their business, how did you go about really making sure you didn't come in and make massive mistakes and learn from those that are around you?
We had to get people that were smarter than us, people that have been there and done it before. So we brought two consultants in to help us start that Wagyu in Richard Eldershaw and Jana Lincoln. And undoubtedly in the early days, we'd have made some real mistakes if we didn't do that. But there's a huge amount of market research went into it before we decided to actually buy our first animals and jump into it. We were up to well over 12 months of researching the market, the flows of the market, how it works, what people are asking for, and things before we actually dived in and purchased our first animals. And
sort of anytime I do talk to you, you can quote bulls here, cows there, whatever. Obviously, you live and breathe that stuff now, so you're sort of always hunting databases, and like any sort of possessed breeder that we all tend to be, it's just waiting for that next bull or finding that next animal that you can bring in to make this into the next shift you need to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. Most nights are spent sifting through the database, looking for what's out there. And particularly now that we're really starting to get a run on in our own breeding program is what animals we've got within our own base that we can use to project further ahead than what someone else's animals would. We've got some pretty cool animals come through in the 25 drop that are going to be able to really push things forward. Animals that are pretty well in the top 1 to 5% on most WBVs and very unrelated to the rest of the herd. Very balanced animals that we can use to really take the quality of the herd, particularly on the female side, forward very quickly.
Yeah, great. I want to circle back to kind of where we started and bookend the interview with kind of, I guess, other ways you've sort of built business tools around you, and that's like Marcus Oldham for a few years. Was there anything that stood out by going away and studying that sort of allowed you to approach Kerin Ag maybe differently than what your parents had or what those around you had?
What I gained at Marcus Oldham was the tools and the knowledge and the confidence to actually do the market research and run the numbers and be confident in what I was putting forward as a business option. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of market research went into actually working out whether a one, a cattle breeding enterprise, and two, a Wagyu enterprise was going to be viable in our business. So what Marcus taught me was how to assess the markets and how to run the numbers to see that if it's viable. And also gave me the confidence to develop the business model that we have for the Wagyu, what we were going to breed, how we were going to differentiate ourselves, and how we were going to provide additional profitability and value for the clients and anyone else that uses our genetics within the system. And undoubtedly that place it's incredibly well connected. So the contacts I've got, the friends I've made and things, they're already shining through and starting to help in this Wagyu enterprise as well.
Excellent. I thought you might mention that's also got your wife, but
yeah, true. The Marcus marriage.
Yeah, excellent. And the final bookend, I guess, just to bring it all back to the wider business, I guess trading and seed stock are completely opposite businesses, but I think you've already answered this pretty well in the sense that, like, seed stock, or particularly seed stock cattle, you can graze low quality pasture. But I guess, maybe just run us through, how do you balance these quite different cash flow and businesses in trade and cattle seed stock, which is the sort of slowest business you can be in almost, and manage that with your pasture management philosophies?
So the cash flows on them are two very different animals. You've got constant cash in and cash out in the trading, and then it is slower coming in and tends to come in far more blocky with a seed stock production business. But what is good about the seed stock production business is that it's fairly consistent as far as the cash that comes in each year. It's very budgetable. You can show that to a bank and be like, we know that we're going to hit pretty ballpark in these numbers based off what we've done previously. And that just gives them a little bit more confidence to lend the money on the trade animals. So in the past, the seed stock business that we started with, Kerin Ag, used to pay all the overheads of the business and keep the business open. Since COVID and those costs have gone up, that's no longer the case. So there was a lot more pressure put on the trading to pay a lot more of their way as well. Now that we've got the Wagyu, we're at a point where the seed stock production businesses now not only cover the overheads, but they're actually generating profit into the business as well. So the doors are open and we've got cash flowing in, and the seed stock is still used to match stocking rate to carrying capacity. It's almost impossible to do it with breeding stock because it's just too slow to increase and decrease numbers, and they're quite often animals that you don't really want to get rid of because of their genetic merit. Where not that we're emotionally attached to our seed stock businesses, but there is no emotion at all with the trading. If the season goes against us, we just dump animals, we liquidate animals. And fortunately, we contract a lot of the animals and we know the delivery dates of them. So we can budget out our grass a long way and have a fair idea of what's going on. And then if we hit a situation like last September where the rain just turns off for 8 months and we get 6 weeks of red hot wind that just fried everything off, we can dump animals very, very quickly. But in the cattle trading, the Wagyu and the cattle trading work together very well and add additional value to each other. We've done some pretty big repro trades in the past, AIing a lot of Angus heifers. We're now at a position where we've got bulls of high enough quality that we can add value to those trades with our own genetics, which in turn adds value to the Wagyu operation because our genetics are out there and you can pick up those people as a future bull client. Like they're going to need bulls to rejoin them the next year. You've got your foot in the door by putting your genetics in those heifers. So they work really, really well together in that regard.
Yeah, excellent, mate. Yeah, there's, like you said, there's a lot of thought went into it, and that's very clear and how it all works together. Final question, Joe, is who's the best human you've had the pleasure to learn from?
I've been incredibly fortunate to have a really good group of people around me, or like my whole life, basically. Some really smart people, and I've learnt from a lot of things from a lot of people, whether it's lecturers at Marcus, my first boss up in Queensland taught me a lot. Members of the family board, they've been unreal mentors, and even next gen and yourself, Mark, I've learned a lot from you over the years, but undoubtedly the person that I've learnt the most from has been my old man. He's he's pretty cool to work with. There's a saying that, you need to think outside the box. At this point, I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know what the box is.
Doesn't even know there is one.
No, he's certainly not thinking inside of it anyway. So that's undoubtedly been, he's been my biggest teacher and probably had the biggest influence on my career progression as a whole anyway.
Yeah, I thought that may be the answer. Be obviously a bit of a force of nature in the way he thinks. So and all those have listened to Nigel speak lots of times. But really appreciate the answer, mate. And really looking forward to seeing how the Wagyu evolve over time. I know that you'll do it as best Wagyu can be done. So it'll be interesting to see that come together, that different style of Wagyu, and bring the power of data to not just marbling, but to other parts of the beast as well.
Yep. No, it's all very exciting. Looking forward to the future.
Thanks, mate. All the best.
Thanks very much, Mark.
Thanks for listening, and thanks again to our 3 fantastic sponsors. Heinegger, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Allflex Livestock Intelligence, part of MSD Animal Health, offer an extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. ProWay Livestock Equipment offer turnkey solutions from design through to professional installation and specialise in facilities that are tailored to your specific operation for all livestock species. We thank these 3 great companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.